War Report coming live every Tuesday at 7 with Steve, Cat, Ryan, Amanda, and Eric. And the voice of NEW, Vince Berry. Hitting all the topics like a clothesline flurry. Turn up your speakers and hear them out. You can listen from your car, even on your couch. They too raw, who NXT? Handing out SmackDowns, follow on IG. Plus, it's sponsored by Tag Me a Date. Go to YouTube and sub now for every update. It's all wrestling here. No safe space. Now listen in. Time to hear from some of the greats.
I was wondering who you were going to start.
To the greatest heel in the wrestling business today. One of the tribe, Maxwell Jacob fucking Friedman, ladies and gentlemen. Vince, open us up, my friend.
He's not the tribal chief. He's just a member of the tribe. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Report podcast. Brought to you by Tag Me a Date, of course. We are here to talk all things wrestling. We are here live on a Tuesday, 6 p.m. on Eastern Time. Live streaming all over the place. Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, Twitter, whatever. We are here. We're live. And I thought you were going to start with some WWE stuff. The MJF music threw me off, so I'm glad we can,
Well, I have to be honest. I was kind of indecisive, and I was having a tough time figuring out which route I was going to go. So I hit up Eddie, and I said, "What do you think?" And he suggested MJF, and then we can kind of go right into a little All Elite Wrestling to start off, because what a hell of a Dynamite, which we'll get into. So I have to give the credit where the credit is due, but I thought it was a good call. Made my decision very easy, because honestly, the only other option I was really going to come up with, because I didn't want to piss everyone off at the very beginning of the show with Goldberg, I was going to do Lita, but
yeah, I would say, Goldberg, yeah.
So everyone, welcome to the War Report podcast live.
We are live.
We have a lot to talk about. So we're going to start off with a little Dynamite. We're going to switch it up this week because we've been starting up with some WWE, and we'll get to that bullshit. But we do have some shit, because what a hell of a Dynamite, and we finally got MJF CM Punk in Chicago, which again we'll break it all down. But I do want to start off before we even get into Dynamite from last week, because I've been waiting since this came out that I wanted to kind of go over it with you guys and see what the general consensus is. But Tony Khan this week on Dynamite has a huge announcement, another signing, and I'm guessing it could be one of two at this point. Like, realistically, I'm thinking it's Keith Lee or Jeff Hardy. So I wanted to hear the thoughts, see what you guys think. But I am very excited, and it is getting to me to want to tune in live this week to hear what this announcement is, because either way, I'm happy. Keith Lee or Jeff Hardy, and who knows, maybe it's somebody else I'm not even thinking of at the moment. But when I heard that, those were the first two names that came to me. What do you guys think?
I mean, you touched on it, man. I definitely believe Keith Lee or Jeff Hardy would definitely probably be one of the two. The only third one, the option I was thinking about, but I feel like they're saving it, would be the Briscoes. With that whole thing that's going on with FTR. Yeah.
I mean, listen, I would not be upset with that either, because I have been a fan of them boys for a long time. They're real, they're rugged, they're badass, and they're fucking nuts. So, I mean, their promo work is so real. It's so great, because they truly don't give a fuck. They are hard. Those guys are loaded. Yep. There's no way they're not. They've been big-time players in Ring of Honor for a very long time. They're not, fucking brand new to the game. So they live very modestly. They still live their trailer life, farm life. Right. I mean, they are the real deal. I fucking love them boys. And I hope they do. I hope Tony Khan does bring them in, whether it's this announcement or it's down the road, but they have what they've been. See, I just wish WWE would get it. What AEW is doing so well is storytelling. Whether, there's people shitting on this whole MJF CM Punk feud, that it's just a lot of this and not enough of the wrestling, but they're telling one hell of a story. So to me, fuck the internet trolls. I think it's fantastic. But WWE can't tell a compelling story the way AEW is. You got FTR and them boys just on social media alone. The storytelling is great. All Tony's got to do is say the door's open.
Yeah. I mean, listen, as far as AEW goes, the door is open. They would, I'm sure they would even work with WWE if the circumstance was right. I believe it when Tony and Cody and Kenny and the Bucks say if anybody from any promotion wants to come in, they can come in. So you really don't know. So mostly people are thinking WWE names. Jeff Hardy, Keith Lee are the front runners. The good question here, did WWE finally let Ali go? The answer is no. Mustafa Ali is still employed by WWE. They are refusing to let him go. It's a weird thing because internally they say they have value in him, so they don't want to release him, but they also don't want to put him on TV and give him a fair shake. So
Ali has not been let go. They're torturing the poor guy.
No, but the weird thing would be the way Tony Khan phrased the tweet is that somebody is slamming the door on their prior company and coming in. So either Ali is going to get himself in all kinds of trouble breaking a WWE contract, or it's somebody who literally got up and left, who is Jeff Hardy, who walked out and left. He didn't get released.
And turned down a chance to come back at the Rumble and be in the Hall of Fame, which I'm very glad he didn't, because, what they did to him was absolute bullshit. Whatever happened to being innocent until proven guilty.
Exactly.
And especially I mean, listen, he's got a history. We get it. I mean, it's not new. He's got a past, but the guy's been straight and narrow, for a while now. Give the guy some fucking credit.
Yeah, Matt Hardy confirmed. They got the WWE drug test results back. The tests were negative, and then WWE started backpedaling on that.
And he also said that he doesn't want to be inducted as Jeff Hardy. He wants to be inducted as the Hardy Boys.
Right.
And that's how he should be inducted, because Matt's just as important as Jeff is.
Vince doesn't like Matt the same way he never liked Christian.
Right.
So
I get it.
It's not important. Matt Hardy's induction isn't important to him. Couple weird things about
this.
If
he wants Jeff, though, it's going to have to be important.
Yes,
and
exactly.
The Bucks have been teasing Jeff for weeks now, too.
The Bucks say a lot of things. They like to stir up the internet, too.
Specifically is that this mystery signee is competing in a singles match against Isaiah Cassidy for a spot in the Face of the Revolution ladder match. Now, do you consider 40-something-year-old, almost 50-year-old Jeff Hardy to be the face of a revolution? Do you consider that to be Keith Lee?
I could certainly see it being Keith Lee.
The other thing people are saying now is maybe it's somebody from New Japan, like Jay White. Jay White hasn't been able to perform in Japan for New Japan for quite a while because his home base is now Florida. He's moved to Florida. He's working a lot at New Japan Strong, which is in California. And he's been working just kind of like, stuff, indies in the U.S. and stuff in the U.S. There's speculation that it may be him coming in. I don't think any of the mainline Japanese guys are coming in, but I mean, shit, it could be a Tanahashi, it could be Okada, who knows? But when it was first announced by Tony, everybody jumped right to the WWE guys. Now, over the last couple days, the outliers like the New Japan guys are cropping up. The two WWE names that I've also heard that are insane, that if either of them happen, people will shit themselves, are Triple H or Shane.
All right. Now,
Shane's working without... Shane has no contract. He was let go, right?
Hold on. Let's since you opened that door, I want to jump in for a minute. So, I've been saying this now at work with a couple guys since the announcement that WWE has quietly let Shane McMahon go, even though it exploded on the internet hours later. And there's really not a lot of mixed stories. There's really one story as to what took place. At the end of the day, what you take home from it is that nobody is ever truly safe, because even Vince's own son got fired by the man. So,
and his son-in-law, the whole department his son-in-law worked for.
Right. So now my thing is this: if Shane is bitter and pissed off at his father, you want to talk about, listen, and I think it's a long shot. Internet, I'm telling you now, what I am about to say is something that would be amazing for the wrestling business. However, highly unlikely. Thank you. Yes. And ultimately, can you imagine the night that we all sat down and watched Shane McMahon walk out on WCW television and tell Vince that the contract does say McMahon, but it doesn't say Vince, it says Shane McMahon, and I now own WCW, and the goosebumps and the chills that you got as a true wrestling fan, because that was an ultimate amazing moment in history that will never be relived. But imagine now, Shane McMahon walks out on AEW television, and let me tell you something. This will be the closest NWO type of thing you could ever get, because you got Shane come in and then he grabs all the WWE guys. Grab, Aleister Black, grab Christian, Daniel Bryan, Adam Cole, the list goes on. Dean Ambrose, Mox,
there's something there, because speaking of, that happened on Dynamite too. After Moxley's match, Daniel Bryan came out, cut this big long promo about how the young guns in AEW aren't up to Daniel Bryan's standard, or Bryan Danielson's standard of what a professional wrestler is. He specifically mentioned Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus because they dress up like a dinosaur and they dress up whatever. He talked about Sammy and his vlog, and how Adam Page rather is not cutting it as champion. So like the whole thing was Bryan Danielson trying to convince Jon Moxley to join him, and then, like, for lack of a better term, kind of gather up a bunch of young guns and make their own faction of young guys that they're going to train to be real pro wrestlers as opposed to the cartoon AEW wrestlers. So that's like,
well, so here's
that
what
could be a Shane. Imagine Shane McMahon as the money behind the whole thing.
It was me.
Like, it would be so great if they said something like, the contract says McMahon. You know what I mean? They need to say, they would, if it is Shane, it's not Shane. Guys, not Shane.
I mean, right. This is a hypothetical to the 10th power, because the odds of it happening. But imagine if listen. He is technically a free agent. Anything is possible. Now, I will say something else, too. Vince Russo made a good point, which is rare, but he made a good point. Shane McMahon could potentially, if he wanted to, start his own promotion. He's got the money. He's got the knowledge.
Yeah.
He's, he can most certainly do that if he wanted to, too. So it'll be or Shane will just say, you know what, fuck it all, and I'm done, But at the end of the day, it is pro wrestling. If Bret Hart could come back to the WWE, Shane McMahon could come back. Right now, tensions are high. Things are hot. Yeah. He pissed off the wrong people at a big pay-per-view. You don't piss off Brock Lesnar. You don't piss off Randy Orton. You don't try and make the pay-per-view be all about you when you've been gone and put yourself in a major setup for WrestleMania. It just doesn't work that way. And then if you're going to be an asshole to the talent, you kind of put Vince in a position where he had no choice but to do what he did, So it is what it is. But I did want to get that out because it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays and where he goes.
If it is, somebody even said it down here. Now imagine if it's Triple H. I would be speechless. I don't think you
honestly, unless TMZ puts out a report that Triple H and Stephanie are getting a divorce, I don't see it happening.
I know, which they're not, because he just actually posted on his Twitter recently, like I want to say 2 days ago, that him and Stephanie went to go to see Hamilton, and he said that the show was amazing. That's the only thing he actually posted, nothing wrestling related. but he's good to know that the man is healthy. He's up and about.
Yeah,
He's with his wife, and he's enjoying Hamilton. So more power to Trips, for that.
Yeah, I don't think he needs to be doing anything stressful right now, like working in that office over there.
Before anything else, man.
Yeah, I mean, and his in-ring career is definitely over too.
Yes, after the heart problem and the surgery, it's very, very, very likely his wrestling career is over. For the Facebook user that said, "What happened with Shane? Who'd he piss off?" The as Steve said, he pissed off everybody. Yeah, so
it wasn't a matter of who. It was like, who didn't he piss off?
Yeah, so when he came back for the Royal Rumble, right, he tried to make the Rumble Shane focused. Yeah. He wanted
all
a different
the bookers of the Rumble. He pissed off as well.
Yeah. So here's the other thing. Another long shot, but also potential. TJ Wilson, he used to wrestle as Tyson Kidd. If you remember, he had a neck injury that got exacerbated by a muscle buster from Samoa Joe, and he had a separation of his second and third vertebrae. He can't wrestle anymore. But Tyson Kidd, TJ Wilson, has been a backstage producer since he recovered from his neck surgery. Everybody talks great about it,
but by doing that too.
But apparently has been frustrated the last few months and has not been used, and was not after. This is weird to kind of. After Pat Patterson passed away, Pat Patterson was the guy that booked all the Rumbles from number 1 up until the point where he passed away. So the guy, it was his invention. Pat Patterson knew what to do to book a Rumble the right way. He had it in his head. One of the other people that was helping him in the later years was TJ Wilson. There were some people backstage that when they found out that TJ Wilson wasn't helping with the Rumble match, the women's or the men's, they're like, especially the women, I heard, because he has a good connection with the women, if TJ's not producing this Rumble, I don't want to be in it. And he hasn't been to TV in months. They didn't use him for the Rumble. So while he can't wrestle, that could be somebody else who was with WWE.
I mean,
who got, I don't know.
Very highly of him.
He is, and he was a great in-ring talent, and now he's a great producer. But I don't think the announcement indicates that whoever signs is going to immediately compete in that match against Isaiah Cassidy. So we have to think it's somebody who is cleared to wrestle. So Triple H is out, likely, and TJ Wilson's out unless he has a Daniel Bryan style miracle with his neck. So I don't know. We've been spending a lot of time talking about it, and which is great because it's outside of WWE, and it's legitimately, we don't know. There's no spoilers that have come out. Keith Lee just got married. Mia Yim and Keith Lee got married over the weekend. They're posting tropical pictures. Like,
yes, congratulations. I mean, that's awesome.
But in the back of my mind, I'm like, they're posting these honeymoon pictures like they're out, on a cruise, or they're in Fiji or wherever the fuck they are.
Doesn't mean they can't make it back in time for Wednesday night.
And it doesn't mean that they didn't just take those pictures in like Florida with a bunch of tropical drinks. And they're like, yeah, dude, we're here the whole time. So yeah.
Well, but they did legit just get married. So the chances are they probably are on their honeymoon.
Right. You're giving Florida a lot of credit there, Vince. Florida is not that beautiful.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know where I'm just saying they could be using pictures from something else, but they're really on their way to Dynamite, even though they're not. They just get, who knows, man. The things are getting a little wild.
I'd love to see Mia Yim there too.
She would be great for the women's division. There is,
I feel like it's a package deal. You know what I mean? At this point, that's like carrying Cross. Like right now, Killer Cross, goes with Scarlett.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can't take one and not the other. Right? Exactly.
Yeah, and I think all those guys. I mean, there's an Owen tournament for the men and the women, the Owen Hart tournament. So I feel like that might be an opportunity to debut some new people on both the men's and the women's side. You put together these brackets, a lot of them are AEW talent, and then maybe you leave a couple spots open for question marks and mystery opponents.
Morrison could become Johnny Elite.
Johnny Elite? I mean, listen, dude, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with him coming in and I think John Morrison would be okay, but like the way Tony's hyping this up, it has to be a main event player.
Right.
It has to be a guy that he's gonna.
Like, what's his deal?
Who's that?
Gargano.
That's the other one that people have been thinking Gargano might be.
He left NXT, if I recall, to be with Candice because she was just having his baby. So I don't know if the baby's here yet.
They just had the baby shower like last week, so not yet.
But he's officially not.
Yeah.
But he's officially not in with.
He's
WWE.
not under contract with WWE.
Oh no.
He's a free agent, so.
I'll count that one out. I don't think it's going to be
right. Yeah, I don't think it's Gargano.
Hey,
I thought if
there's
it was
always Samoa Joe.
Joe is another one who could be. That would be a great announcement if he can wrestle. Because I know the WWE doctors didn't want to clear him to wrestle, but they didn't want to clear Christian. They didn't want to clear Bryan Danielson. They didn't want to clear a lot of people who are still wrestling now. So I think it's more of an insurance liability thing than an actual pass or fail a physical thing. I'm just, it's great that we're talking about it like this because usually we're like, yeah, Brock, 3 weeks out from the Royal Rumble, we're like, yeah, Brock Lesnar's winning the Royal Rumble and he's going to win all the belts and he's just going to, we're talking about, and hey, look, Brock Lesnar came out and did exactly what we think.
You stop right there, Vince. You stop right there. There is no way Brock's going to win the Universal title from Roman Reigns. 526 days and counting. You have to acknowledge him.
We'll see what happens. Like, they keep telling us we're not going to have a title versus title unification match at WrestleMania, and I feel like they're lying. I just feel like Brock's going to get this fucking title back at the Elimination Chamber. It's going to be title versus title. Then we'll see what happens. But
I think the Elimination Chamber is the perfect match for Brock to be able to lose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm with Eddie. I really think it's just going to be for the title. It's not going to be a unification match unless they are planning to start the new wrestling year with 2 brands and 1 roster.
Right. Which
would make Eric very happy.
Well, think about it. How many people did they freaking fire in 2021?
And
made record-breaking profits, by the way.
Yeah, that just came out last
What
week.
the fuck?
Over $1.1 billion or something like that in profits.
They got rid of a whole roster's worth of people in 1 year.
And, that's so. Not that I want to take a whole lot of stock in what people like Nia Jax say, but listen, she was on the inside. She did an interview with Renee. She said that when WWE was telling people that there was budget cuts and there wasn't room in the budget for them, they weren't saying really that we don't have them, we can't afford you. Obviously, they made $1 billion in profit this year. What they were saying was, we don't see you as marketable enough or whatever. And if you notice, Braun Strowman got fired, so we have Omos coming out. And Captain Aziz. You get rid of Nia Jax, and all of a sudden, Doudrop is a big thing. They found, we need a large, a tall person. Well, we've got another tall guy. We don't need to pay Braun Strowman. We need a big girl. Oh, we got a big girl. We don't need to pay Nia. we need this. We need that. It's like, we'll just go into NXT and grab some newbie. We don't need our, somebody who's been sitting here for 15 years. Like Zack Ryder, who went out and is actually legitimately wrestling now. But anyway, we're getting away from the point. They're just $1.1 billion, and they found the need to fire 100 people last year, 100 talent, and not counting the backstage people that they also let go, because there were people in the Stamford offices and on the production side that were let go. So it wasn't just talent; it was a ton of people.
And as far as someone like Shane or Triple H or any of these other people we talked about to AEW, those could be like game changers, especially Shane or Triple H.
Having, even if they don't wrestle, just having the name recognition of a Shane McMahon or a Triple H on that show, that's going to get eyes on the show, especially because if it was Triple H, all the stuff Cody did, breaking the throne with a sledgehammer, coming out with a golden shovel like he's burying people, using the pedigree, you know what I mean? All this stuff is
I have heard that there are people on the inside in AEW that are telling Tony Khan to stay away from Shane McMahon. So yeah. It really is going to depend on,
But he's not. Here's the thing.
For what reason?
He's not going to have
that. I haven't heard. I don't know.
I think it's because Shane tries to get himself a bigger spot than they plan for him, or he wants to have a bigger spot than whatever they're,
Yeah, but you know what though? Shane's also always down to do some crazy fucking spots too. You know what I mean? Like not for nothing.
Shit, put Shane versus Darby Allin.
Oh my God, they'd both throw each other off of something stupidly high.
I think Darby would just run circles around Shane. Like I just don't think Shane could even hang with somebody like Darby Allin anymore.
Yeah, I mean Shane got red running to the ring at the Royal Rumble.
And wanted to be number one, mind you.
Yeah. My favorite part of the whole story was after they apparently remixed and redid the numbers so many times during the actual Rumble that Shane's music started playing and it wasn't the number he wanted to come out at. And Randy Orton looked at him and said, well, I'm not coming out to Here Comes the Money, so you better get your ass out there.
I did hear that. That's
fucking great. I love that. He's like, because I know Randy Orton's sitting back, and he's like, you hear it. He's like, I'm not doing it, so you got to go, dude.
Didn't Vince change it like 20 times during the
that Rumble got changed a lot.
It didn't get changed. I heard that it didn't get changed during the show, but it did get changed before. Like a bunch of times before.
It was day of. It wasn't.
I mean, Vince McMahon is known for that. He's been known for that.
Yeah, that didn't surprise me, quite honestly. It really didn't. I mean, that's vintage Vince McMahon. He does that for Raw and SmackDown, let alone a fucking pay-per-view.
I love Orton putting his foot down like that. That's awesome.
Well, but he's not wrong. Like, could you imagine Randy Orton walking out to fucking Here Comes the Money? It's fucking
what are they gonna do? Stop? Somebody send a message. Hey, stop playing Shane's music. We made a mistake. No, it's live, pal. We gotta go.
Randy doing the shit.
Randy Orton coming out and doing the whole thing.
It's funny too, because Orton's music was almost going to be what Punk's WWE music was.
Yeah, Punk had This Fire Burn, or Randy Orton had This Fire Burns before Punk did. Yeah, it's weird, kind of.
But I mean, look, the Patriot had Kurt Angle's music before Kurt Angle. So,
hey man, I was going to talk about this last week. I did not recognize anybody's music at this Royal Rumble. All the new music is awful. Like aside from like classic
once
superstars.
Jim Johnston left, it was like
Ricochet sucks. Liv Morgan sucks. Dewdrop sucks. Their music, like all of them. It's
Shayna's
all like,
new song isn't as good as her old song. There's like when Liv, I think it was when Liv Morgan came out. I thought the music was Alexa Bliss's music.
Yeah.
And I thought she came back. Like the whole thing was very confusing because it's just all, I hate to say very generic, but very generic kind of music now.
Out of all the new music they've done, like all jokes aside, Roman Reigns is still the best one. By far.
I mean, listen, that's a trickle-down effect. They spend the most time paying attention to Roman Reigns and booking Roman Reigns' stories. He better have the best music.
That's true.
Yeah, and everybody else just fuck him.
He deserves the best.
Hey, I mean, he's the top of the food chain.
He's the head of the table.
Yeah, the head of the table.
Our tribal chief. Our reason we are here right now.
Facing motherfucking Goldberg.
You know,
listen,
I was waiting for this.
Very nicely about MJF. This is not an anti-Jewish thing. We love our Jewish wrestlers here.
This is MFG, motherfucking Goldberg.
Listen, I knew this was coming. I was waiting for Vince really because I knew he was going to be the one.
We had
and I'm going to say, listen, I'm one of the few on the show that's a Goldberg fan. I've always liked Goldberg. I was always a fan, not because he's a great wrestler, but I just, in WCW, he was just the shit. And then when he first came to WWE, he was the shit. And he's still, like, for his age, he's still fucking great. And the kids love him. And you know, like there's still hardcore wrestling fans that are a fan of him and this and that. He does draw, but just because his contract says he has to have X amount of dates does not mean that they all have to be for the world heavyweight title.
Doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. You've got guys on the roster killing themselves day in and day out to make themselves top guys. Yeah. Goldberg shows up and just says, "You're next."
I agree with you 1,000%, man. He should have.
You know what I mean? With at least have a match or two to qualify or something.
Right.
You know,
like I said, you should have him like if you're gonna have him out, like have him squash people, like you said, have him come in, have him earn that shit, have him beat people like he did that match with Dolph Ziggler, right? Like came out, did his thing as badass when he did that, like something like that. Have him earn shit.
And don't get me wrong, this is coming from a Goldberg fan. And I don't think it's right. It's not fair to the rest of the locker room. Just like I don't think it's fair with Ronda. And just like I think it's not fair with Brock, quite honestly. But I love them all. So I'm good with it. But still, it's like, you know what I mean? Now, the question is, does Goldberg fucking lose in Saudi Arabia? So now does Roman lose his fucking streak in Saudi Arabia? At the elimination?
Roman wins that match.
Don't even put that bad juju here.
I'm just saying, guys, like at the end of the day, like stranger shit has happened in Saudi Arabia. Let's not forget about the Fiend Seth Rollins.
Oh, or the Fiend against Goldberg.
That's what it was, the Fiend with Goldberg when he took the belt.
So I'm just saying, let's be fucking realistic. Anything is possible in the world wrestling entertainment.
As Eddie was just saying, 520 some odd days. You're gonna, you've got this epic encounter with Brock Lesnar coming up at WrestleMania, and you just take a left turn. You just make Goldberg win. Like, it's such a Vince McMahon move to just go, fuck it. Goldberg's going to win. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a Vince McMahon play. But you're right there. This is like announcing, this is not as bad, but it's like announcing that on the day of WrestleMania 34 in New Orleans, that there's going to be a pay-per-view in 3 weeks from Saudi Arabia where they're doing Brock Lesnar against Roman Reigns in a cage. And you're like, oh, so we're not really going to get a good finish at WrestleMania. And lo and behold, I don't like that they announced this Goldberg match. There's value in Goldberg. I agree with you, Steve. I've been a big Goldberg fan since WCW. I mean, it's awesome. Watching Goldberg beat Hogan.
It was great
on TV.
The way the crowd erupted.
The Georgia Dome. The crowd was throwing toilet paper and stuff in the ring before the match even started.
Oh, it was so good.
Bobby Heenan's call.
Heenan's commentary on it.
And the whole thing was magic.
Well, because it finally justified everything Heenan had been saying for years. It was just like poetic justice in a way. It was great.
Yeah.
But and here's the thing. Goldberg didn't just he wasn't that guy. He was wrestling Hugh Morris and Steven Regal.
I mean, he wasn't
and
even,
you know what I mean? And Lenny Lane and
first.
building up a streak.
He was that guy by accident, which was awesome.
Right.
Organically.
Right. Yes. So and that's what WWE kind of doesn't even understand about what made Goldberg special is like there's an organic you really should start him off and have people kind of get reintroduced to Goldberg. Like you were saying, Eddie, he needs to come in, beat a couple people, whoop on some ass, and then go, okay, now I'm ready to challenge for a title.
I mean, the truth of the matter is, it's not a lot of work for Goldberg. If it stays true to form, the matches are no more than 2 minutes long. His entrance is longer than the match.
Goodbye.
That's it. And just pant to the crowd and do Goldberg shit. You know, that's what made him awesome. He was just so fucking badass.
Right.
But it's like it just shouldn't be for the title.
I agree. He should have another like a showcase match with somebody that's not Roman Reigns. Or if it's with Roman Reigns should say, hey, listen, I've been here for 500 and something days. You haven't. This is going to be a non-title match. Then if Goldberg beats Roman Reigns, at least it's non-title.
Like, I just don't understand. Like, you couldn't figure out someone else in the back that could go for the title? That would make sense?
Well, that's the other problem, dude, first of all, it's Saudi Arabia, and they ask certain things. They asked for Yokozuna when the guy died 20 years ago. So who knows? They might have said, hey, we want Goldberg on this show.
That's a true story.
Yeah.
They asked for the Ultimate Warrior, too, after he died.
Yeah, so in the Greatest Royal Rumble, they wanted Yokozuna, and they didn't have one, so they just hired a legit sumo wrestler to come over and be in the Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
And but anyway, this is kind of a problem. It's been a problem since the end of the Attitude Era. When you think of big wrestling superstars during the Attitude Era, you could name Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan, Triple H, The Rock, Stone Cold, Kurt Angle towards the tail end of it. You had this Macho Man, you had a Scott Steiner, you had a list of guys. Then the philosophy changed, and they said, all right, well, we're going to focus on making John Cena a star. And because they spent so much time focused on make John Cena's star and Batista, who left, John Cena, who's not around anymore, they didn't build up those other guys of that generation. So there really aren't any. When you think back in the last 20 years, who do you think of as a legend? You think of John Cena. He comes back and he's a legend. There aren't that many guys of that, the era that this past era from like 2001 until John Cena retired in like 16 or 17.
Well, what does that
built up
say
as a
though?
big
That
star.
goes back to what we've been saying.
then
WWE
they-
has
and
not
then
been
they
able
did
to
it-
create
right.
another big superstar. Like,
And then they did it again with Roman Reigns, and now this generation, you go, oh well, who's a superstar? It's Roman Reigns. Who else is a superstar? Nobody. Finn looks like shit. Kevin Owens couldn't win a match to save his fucking life. Seth Rollins is the only one that potentially matches Roman Reigns, but Seth Rollins isn't cousins with The Rock. Seth Rollins wasn't in a Fast and the Furious movie. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things that Seth Rollins aren't that Roman Reigns is. But there's also, this is another generation. Cena was the only big guy of the last 10 or 15 years. Now Reigns is, again, the last big guy. Who we have nobody. They built up Big E and they dropped the ball. They built up Kofi. They dropped the ball. Who is going to – we don't have this next generation of people built up unless, like, Carmelo Hayes from NXT and Braun Breaker, these guys get called up. But even then, that's going to take
those are a couple though that are legit, they possibilities.
Might be the future. But are they also going to just in the future go
like carrying Cross?
Right. They can end up like carrying Cross.
That's the fear.
Or, the other fear is that they don't learn their lesson, and this next generation of people, they only go, okay, we have to pick Carmelo Hayes or we have to pick Braun Breaker or two.
Right,
Their philosophy is we only need one top guy. What?
Like what happens when Reigns retires?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's
what if it's one of those things where if Reigns breaks a leg and he's out for a year, who's the new top guy? Do we go back to Randy Orton, who's been wrestling for 20-something years? Do we go to Seth, who is like I said, down the line, almost as popular as Roman Reigns? There's no flag bearer for WWE if there's no Roman Reigns. There's nobody that brings the
I would say this, though. I would be okay with one more Orton run. Like if it was a solid run and not just a bullshit, like 1 month run. You know what I mean?
Speaking of Orton, how much value is Riddle getting by teaming with Randy Orton? All this knowledge he's getting and shit. I mean, that's
and it's working. The team is so great. They're funny. They work well. They're so over. I just hope they don't, split it up already because there's talks of it.
They were supposed to break up the first night.
Yeah, but it got so over so quick. They wanted to capitalize on it. I'm glad they did.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a Mania match, if anything, if they do break up.
Which I don't really want. I want to keep them together, quite honestly.
Yeah, I wouldn't have had them drop the tag belts at all.
Well, I think they might. If they don't split and face each other at WrestleMania, they're going to challenge for the tag titles at WrestleMania.
Yeah, because they have been building up this feud between them and American Alpha for quite a while. And I'll tell you what, last night's
they were so funny.
Pretty damn funny, especially when Orton gets to like chime in at
with the ounces.
And then Otis was like, I said that. I said the right.
But Gable was the star. Yeah. He was the star. The shush and everything about it, like he's just so fucking good, man. I said it last week too, and it just solidified even more what I said last week, this segment on Raw, because he was the star. He was the star then. He was the star at the start of the Street Profits with more, shit talk with them. It was just, I'm very happy for him because he's finally getting some well-deserved.
He's come such a long way since the Shorty G shit. That was terrible.
Yeah, they didn't know what to do with the guy. And, some people, they still really don't know what to do with.
Like, I personally would have had Gable win the King of the Ring back then instead of Corbin.
Well, yeah, and that's... But see, that would make too much sense. The little guy underdog managing to overcome the bigger opponent and win and make it a feel-good story. No, they needed to beat Chad Gable so that the heel could get more heat and then get more heat and then get more heat but then the babyface never goes over, so you're generating heat without a payoff. And now it's been however long, and I feel like nobody ever really gets a one-up on this fucking Baron Corbin guy. I don't understand why he's so important. I don't understand why he's so overpowered with the way they book him. I don't
Here's
understand
the
how
deal.
nobody has ever kicked out of his fucking finish. Nobody's kicked out of his finisher in WWE, the end of days. That's fucking crazy. He's a job guy. Like, somebody should kick out of this shit.
So what I have heard, and I've heard it more than once. So, you know, sometimes you hear things more than once, you start to believe it, right? So basically what I'm hearing is that when you talk about a company guy, he is one of the most well-respected guys backstage. And I'm talking in the eyes of the upper echelon of WWE. He does whatever they ask him to, no matter what it is, no matter how goofy it is, no matter how dirty he's going to get, how embarrassing it's going to be. He does it. He never questions it. He never backtalks. He does whatever they want.
Right.
And in return, he gets booked the way he does. And for that, you got to respect it because he's a company guy. He's a guy that does right by the bosses, and he's getting that in return. And not for nothing, Baron Corbin is not bad in the ring. He's not bad on the mic. His gimmicks just make you hate him, which means he's doing a good job. He's not terrible.
He's never had
he's never had a quality run for anything. I get you.
Except
Except for King Corbin.
Right. But
I feel like he's a charisma vacuum.
Like Baron Corbin was a guy, like he was a motorcycle guy and then whatever, and then he cut his hair and then he was King Corbin. Then he wore the waistcoat vest things when he was the constable or whatever it was. Now he's Happy Corbin. I just don't I don't know. Like when you see somebody like the Repo Man, you understand what the Repo Man is. I don't know what a Baron. Well, I don't know what a Happy Corbin is or what a Baron Corbin is. You know what I mean?
I agree.
That's weird. Missed the first hour of Raw because of watching my aunt's boyfriend on Antiques Roadshow. So I missed Alpha Academy Arcade Bro. Yeah, and also a lot of people probably
watch it on YouTube. It's worth it. It was a great segment. Like
a lot of people are gonna have to look it up because Raw was on Sci-Fi.
Oh, that's right.
Ham thing, and then he didn't want to. Gable didn't want to listen to his buddy there, even though he said the right answer.
Like if anything, they're setting up for the breakup of that team.
Maybe. What do we do? Like, where do those guys go?
I just feel like Otis is terrible now.
Yeah, I mean, ever since they stopped the whole stakes and weights and Tucky and all that shit, like it's
like they break up a tag team only to put them in another tag team.
Yeah.
Well, they obviously didn't see anything in Tucker, which I don't understand because I thought he was pretty decent.
I thought he
was
a good
guy.
I think they wanted. Part of me thinks they might have wanted Otis to be the biggest guy in the tag team, so they put him with a smaller guy.
I get it. I mean,
it's going to eventually happen, and I hate to say it because they're both great, but I feel like they're going to do the same thing eventually with the Street Profits because Montez Ford is their guy.
Oh, they're going to break up. Yeah, because they got to make Montez Ford a single star. I mean, the money is in that guy. He's
the money is the team in that case. I mean, they're both so good together. I mean,
Prime Time, neither were as good as singles compared to when they were a team,
That's true.
And Crime Time never won the tag team titles, which is, I think, is a travesty.
It's baffling, actually.
Cade and Murdoch were tag team champions. Why couldn't we have Crime Time as a tag team champion?
We're going to leave that one alone. I think that one's pretty crystal clear.
That's 15 minutes left in the show, and we didn't even touch on that amazing match between MJF, CM Punk.
So here we are.
I mean,
last Wednesday night, February 2nd, Chicago, Illinois. Live
what a crowd! What a crowd!
TBS, AEW
Groundhog
Dynamite
Day, Vince's birthday.
That's right. It was a big day. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna watch my favorite wrestler lose to MJF in like 2 hours. And sure as shit,
what'd you do for your birthday, bro?
I went out to dinner and
It
stuff.
doesn't matter what you did for your birthday. Nah,
but I'm coming back. I'm like, I'm gonna watch CM Punk lose, unfortunately. And not only did they have him lose, he lost twice in one night.
Twice. Well, the first time was, if I was correct, he choked him out with his tape, right?
Yeah, he took the MJF took the wrist tape off, wrapped it around Punk's neck, and then put in a headlock or a sleeper, and then dropped like the 3-arm drop.
Yep.
Where in wrestling history, 99% of the time, 1, 2 drops, the third one something happens where he gets nope. So they choked him up, but then the referee discovered the wrist tape and reversed the decision, restarted the match, and the only thing that I didn't like, and we'll get into this, is the finish of the match was that Wardlow came down to the ring, handed the Dynamite Diamond ring to MJF. MJF used it, as he always does, to finish his matches. I don't even know what his finisher is at this point. His finisher is just using the ring to cheat.
But isn't that the way to do it? If Punk is going to take his first loss and he's going to take it in Chicago, it has to be a dirty.
I just didn't like that Wardlow. I would have liked it because nobody came out when Hangman was wrestling Bryan Danielson. I know it's a different kind of match, but those guys, there was no interference. There was no wonkiness. Wardlow coming out, especially with the way he's been reacting to MJF now, was just kind of like, all right, well, this is the finish now. Like, I wasn't really paying attention to the time. I was just enjoying the wrestling match. And then as soon as Wardlow came on, I'm like, fuck, there's the end of the match. Like,
see CM Punk do the Pepsi plunge. When was the last
time? That was great.
That was
CM Punk do the Pepsi plunge for the first time as JR said, that's the first time in 17 years. I haven't seen him done but JR, you've never seen him do the Pepsi plunge because he stopped doing it before he got to WWE. He had to stop doing it because it was too similar to the pedigree.
Yeah.
But damn, he hit it. Like the whole thing, I mean, it was very well done.
But also it's good in that the way they're teasing the MJF Wardlow eventual breakup. They're doing it slowly, which is the right way. It's marinating.
Yeah, people and they're getting everybody ready for when it happens.
I'll tell you what. I mean, what if it comes down to like eventually, let's say MJF takes the world title from Page, right? And Wardlow's still with them, and then they do the breakup after, and then Wardlow becomes a big babyface and takes the belt off of MJF eventually.
Well, something like that's going to come to a head because Wardlow is, I believe, in that ladder match where you get a future TNT title shot. But they've made it known that Wardlow's contract is not with AEW. Wardlow's contract is with MJF.
Which is great.
Right. And
great.
As everybody's favorite wrestling lawyer, Smart Mark Sterling, pointed out, there's a clause in Wardlow's contract that says any title opportunities or championships that he earns are forfeited to MJF. Very much an Andre the Giant, Ted DiBiase,
Earl Hebner kind of move.
Yeah.
It also reminds me
of the documentary on Amazon Prime. Check it out if you guys have a chance.
And if Wardlow wins, the controversy is going to be, will he hand that title shot over to MJF? And if he doesn't, MJF has threatened to let him go from his contract, but that doesn't mean that Tony Khan's not going to come out and say, now you're signed to AEW. And
that reminds me of the early Four Horsemen when they kicked out Lex Luger because Luger won that Battle Royal thing. And Ole was like, no, you're not going to take the title match against Flair, and then they eventually turn on Luger and kick him out.
Yeah,
the Giant won the World War III, and he wouldn't, they wouldn't let him, take the belt from Hogan or something.
Right, he got kicked out. Yeah, so there's precedent here for some kind of controversy on handing over these title opportunities and title shots, and there is going to come a breaking point, and when Wardlow finally unloads on MJF, he's a made man.
But what's great about this?
The build is so great, though.
Yeah, and that plus look what like to your point earlier, Steve. AEW knows how to build stars. So right there, they're building MJF and Wardlow at the fucking same time.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Correct.
And it's involving Punk. See, here's the thing.
Yeah, that too.
Punk can go in and wrestle either of those guys now, and there's going to be something there. Punk can get his win back. Now that MJF has beaten him on TV, and he can say, I've beaten CM Punk, even though he cheated twice. He can still say, I beat CM Punk. Punk can go beat him in. I'm thinking it's going to be a 2 out of 3 falls match, just out of the way that things happened last week. I think there's going to be a stipulation match that Punk wins. Because, like, it's the same thing happened with Jericho. MJF beat Jericho, and then Jericho got the upper hand in one of the matches. But ultimately, MJF ended up getting the rub because the Pinnacle beat the Inner Circle and MJF beat Jericho within that feud. So even though MJF took the loss, he was still built up. So I think MJF is going to take a loss eventually to Punk.
I think this is going at least 2 more matches.
Yeah, I think this, and it involves, even talking about that, involves a Wardlow match against another. Like, it could be a rematch against Punk, so Punk can try and get back at him for those 10 power bombs or whatever it was. It could involve tag team matches, Wardlow and MJF against Punk and somebody, and who knows, man. Like, that's what I like about this, is that it makes sense. It involves everybody in the roster. It's bringing an old veteran in with 2 new talents and putting over 2 new talents. And it's a good, like, we're not even talking about the match. It was a 45-minute long match. And Punk, who is 45, wrestled a 45-minute long match. And it wasn't high flying or anything. There were high spots, but it wasn't like constant flips and flops and all that. It was a very well wrestled, smart match. Punk is a brilliant guy, puts together a good match, figures out a way to maximize his time without having to do a bunch of dives, taking some bumps, but not like, bumping like crazy. But, when you're a certain age, you can only take a couple bumps a match, but he's,
You want to know something? It's one of the best stories being told in pro wrestling in a very long time. And one of the reasons it's as good as it is, not just because they're both amazing on the microphone.
Right.
But MJF idolized CM Punk. At the end of the day, real life, folks, MJF got into pro wrestling and CM Punk was one of the reasons. He was a huge fan of Punk. That's a shoot. That's not story. That's a real deal. So there's something to be said when you put them together, because there's so much true passion, because you know what I mean? It's so well done. It's an amazing story, and it's going along as it should. It's the build is everything. And
that's the other thing, dude, is it's going. I hate to say it, if this was a WWE story, it would have been for one pay-per-view. It might have been 4 weeks or 6 weeks.
But you know what though?
It.
But you know what though? This proves WWE's point in a way. Listen to the internet. Listen to all the people shitting on this story now that it's taking too long and this and that.
Well,
WWE always says we have no, we have no patience. Like it's not like it used to be where you can build and build. But AEW is showing that you can, but you still got these fucking marks, and
because there hasn't been a major wrestling promotion on TV competing with WWE for 20 years.
True.
Vince McMahon was the only, so there's a whole generation of people who only know how Vince McMahon books stuff and only how modern Vince McMahon books wrestling. And that's with rushing through things, skipping, fast forwarding through a feud, having some kind of stupid twist in there that didn't make sense, whatever. They're used to the screwy booking. And now AEW is like retraining people about how pro wrestling is supposed to work. Like, especially with this Hangman Page thing. The Hangman Page story started at the very first press conference for AEW, where he said, I am going to be your AEW world champion. And he failed, and he failed, and he failed, and he failed. And it took him 3 years to finally make it to the top. And he beat the best wrestler in the world. They told a complete story, and that took several years. So I'm hoping that people will start to understand wrestling feuds don't have to be done in 6 weeks anymore.
I don't get these complaints either, because if anything, I think that they kind of did the MJF Punk match too soon, in my opinion.
Well, that's because I think they're going back to it.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
yeah. That was my thing. Oh, but I also did want to mention that their women's division is really stepping up now. And look at fucking Serena Deeb right now. Oh my god, she's such a badass.
She's fantastic. Another person that WWE let go. First of all, a person that WWE thought was only good enough to be in the Performance Center, not good enough for TV, or didn't have the look or whatever they were looking for TV. So they made her a trainer, and now she's out there.
Yeah, they did the same thing with Sarah Del Rey.
Yeah. And Facebook commenter, Punk is 45 with 5 question marks. Just so you know, 43. According to this, October 26, 1978. Is that right? 43? Anyway.
Yep.
Still, not a guy that you'd think would be putting on 45-minute long matches, in your mid-40s. Yeah. So good on him.
And we also didn't think Sting would be wrestling several matches either.
In his 60s, yeah.
And doing massive dives off fucking stages and shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But that's the other thing is that I don't want to shit on WWE, but the way AEW treats their legends and the way that they treat their young guys is so much different than the way WWE treats their legends and treats their young guys. Why does WWE treat aside from Goldberg, all the legends come in and like get beat up by Randy Orton, or they get embarrassed by somebody, or JR,
right, like,
JR has to go in for surgery and there's a doctor pulling shit out of his ass. You know what I mean? Like there's always something stupid, whereas AEW kind of respects their talent.
Right. 100%. Well, on that note, we've already reached the top of the hour, folks. That was a quick one for sure.
Woo, definitely was, man. We didn't even I didn't even talk about AJ Styles saying that they should have main roster, and I think it's a good idea, main roster talent go down to NXT to explain to them how different things are on the main roster than it is at NXT. But then also, if you think about it logically, there shouldn't be that much difference. Why
but there is.
Right. That's the fucked up thing is you think about it like there shouldn't be.
Well, maybe there won't be. Well, maybe there won't be as much now since
2.0.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
Anyway, that was something, interesting. If you go see, it was an AJ Styles interview. If you Google it, you'll be able to see what he's talking about. But it's a good idea, especially because he's trying to get towards the end of it. He's towards the end of his career. He wants to help people out. Let these guys know what it's like being on the main roster. So yeah. Anyway,
I mean that's why they're sending Ziggler down there to face Braun Breaker at some point.
Yeah, Ziggler. AJ actually has already recommended he's pitched to Vince for AJ Styles to do an NXT run. They just haven't given him the okay to do it yet.
They teased it. They had him and Grayson Waller for a bit.
Yeah, so we'll see about that. AJ is pushing to be in NXT, so we'll see what happens.
But Vince, I do like your real quick before we go. I do like your pitch about Triple H buying, NXT from Vince and then setting up his own.
Or Billy Corgan owns the NWA right now. What if Triple H bought in with Billy Corgan, or Triple H and Shane put in their money and it's those guys running the NWA? So I don't know. I don't know if Triple H would compete with his father-in-law. I don't know if Shane would want to compete with his old man, but
what I do know is that AEW is making wrestling interesting again.
Yeah, and it's right. We have that question mark about where are people going to go when they are they going to re-sign?
Some of them go to Impact, so some of them go to wherever. MLW is becoming something,
Right. So even those places like Impact and MLW that aren't the top level are still getting a lot of recognition now because they're able to bring in the stars.
Coming into the Bloodline or something. Shit.
Yeah, there's been talk about Jacob Fatu once his MLW contract expires going in.
He's basically what Roman Reigns eventually got to be. A badass,
Yeah, and Jacob Fatu is a great talent. So I think, the Samoan Werewolf will show up somewhere, whether it's AEW or whether it's WWE. I don't know. But yeah, we are at the top of the hour here. Holy Moses, we blew through that. Thank you guys for sticking with us on the War Report here, brought to you by Tag Me a Date. Follow us on social media at Tag Me a Date. That's all one word, no spaces, at Tag Me a Date. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Periscope, all over the damn place. YouTube, if you go to youtube.com, type in Tag Me a Date, you'll find our channel where you can hit subscribe and hit the bell. If you go to Twitch, it's twitch.tv/War Report, and that is all one word as well, War Report. If you prefer the audio version of our podcast as opposed to the live stream, you can go to your podcast app of choice, such as Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts. Type in either the War Report or Tag Me a Date, and our show should come up for you to subscribe. The audio version of the podcast goes up within the hour after our show goes off air. So we're on live streaming 6 p.m. Eastern time until 7. And then between 7 and 8 is when the audio gets pulled and put up on the podcast apps. So you can either go back on our YouTube page or our Twitch and go to see our past live streams, or you can go to the audio podcast app thing and listen to it while you're driving or wherever you're taking the show on the go with you there. And that's about it. I just want to thank you guys for tuning in and remind you that if you have some friends who are also wrestling fans who are looking for a new podcast to listen to, please refer our podcast over to your friends. Let them know that you're listening to the War Report, and they can listen to the War Report, and they can interact with us live on Twitch or Facebook or YouTube, wherever we're streaming. When we're live, we run through an app where we can get comments from all of those websites. So if you're, no matter what website or app you're watching on, if you want to comment on something or you have a question or anything, please put it in the chat. We will read it. We'll put it up on the screen. And again, just let your friends know we're open for business, and we want you guys to as many people listening as possible to our crazy podcast here. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back live streaming on Facebook, on Twitch, on YouTube, on Periscope, all that stuff next week, next Tuesday, 6 p.m. on Eastern time for another edition of the War Report. We will see you then. Have a nice week.